Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone.
Chased down by Beal in the corner for three, gets fouled and hits.
Welcome to DC.
Walker tied him out.
You know where you're at the USA Cup. You're taking it slightly, I'm taking it slightly. Now how you gon' act on you gon' be right back. Well, we gon' be right here, we gon' be right here. We ain't going nowhere. Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound? Well, let me break it down.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nazi with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And today I got the legend himself, Mitch Tischler, who has previously been on the channel. And I believe this will be the second time, if I'm not mistaken. And for those of you who don't know, Mitch Tischler is the operations manager for NBC Sports Washington since May 2019. And of course, is a co-host of the amazing Washington Football Talk podcast for the network alongside JP Finley and Pete Haley. Mitch, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? Legendary. It's something.
Yeah, no, I mean it though. I mean it. But I mean, I the podcast, right? So first off, any news on a potential name change to your podcast? Maybe Commanders Talk, or I know you've probably gotten that question, but
one of these days we'll have a new name. Hopefully by the time the season starts.
Yeah.
Lawyers are a pain in the butt, and it's a thing. Wow. But one of these days we will not be the Washington Football Talk podcast. It'll be hopefully a much better name, but for the time being, we're stuck Washington Football Talk Pod, and at some point we'll be whatever the new name is. For sure, and it's the same great content either way. So I'm not complaining. But on a much more serious note, what are your last thoughts on the Dwayne Haskins tragedy from a couple of Saturdays ago now, which is still fresh on the minds of so many. It should be also noted that the Haskins family reportedly will be hosting a vigil at Bullis High School in Potomac, Maryland on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the tragedy and your fondest memories of him in Washington? I mean, it's incredibly sad. You think about, a young guy like that with his future ahead of him, being stripped at such a young age. And it's hard to put into words, I guess, what you think about it. Regardless of how you feel about him as a football player, which is kind of its own thing, like he was a good dude, and you could see how much he loved life and how much he loved being around the guys and being on the field and playing. And, as a football player, you gave him such a hard time about, selfie gate at the end of the game, going and taking pictures with the fans. But as a guy, you saw a dude who's celebrating a win. He was excited about everything that was happening. I mean, it's tough to hear news like that. I wouldn't say that I got to know him particularly well, but certainly spent, enough time with him that, we knew each other. And I think, for me, one of the more interesting times was before the draft, NBC Sports Washington, we were doing draft previews on a bunch of local players. And obviously Dwayne Haskins was one of them. He was working out in LA. That's where he was doing his pre-draft workouts and training and stuff. And we flew out there. It was myself and Julie Donaldson, and got a chance to spend kind of 4 days with him. And you got to see him, working out, trying to learn the correct technique for 40s, how to run the 40, but also lifting and kind of taking that whole side of things to the next level, but also kind of the way that he interacted with his peers and with, his coaches and all the folks that were out there. And, I came back from that trip and I was like, if this thing ends up coming to DC, which, there was some light talk, I was excited about it because at the end of the day, he was a great dude. He loved life, and it's incredibly sad to see what happened.
Yeah, for sure. And I know it's hard to transition off of this, but with the Commanders offseason thus far, of course, made the Carson Wentz trade in early March. What do you make of the Commanders offseason moves? And the Wentz trade in particular, because you might not know this, but I'm not super high on it. I'm still not super high on it. I'm sort of like adjusting to it, but like I don't know. What is your thoughts on it?
I think what happens with Wentz is going to be in the eye of the beholder. I personally don't like the trade big picture when you look at the trajectory of the franchise. I don't love the trade because I think it sets you back from finding a franchise quarterback that can win meaningful football games, which is something post-knee injury, post-back injury, something that Carson Wentz hasn't proven to be able to do. You look at his situation last year with the Colts, and I'm not even talking about the Jacksonville game, which is what everybody wants to hone in on, but he wasn't asked to do a whole lot as the leader of that offense. You had the best running back in football, piling up, 1,500 plus yards from scrimmage, and they still weren't able to make the playoffs. And I'm not putting that all on Carson, but certainly at times you need a quarterback who can lift you up. And I think, to me, the definition of a franchise quarterback is a guy who's going to go out and win you games. There are times that the running backs the running backs and the receivers can make plays and help you move towards victories. But to me, a franchise quarterback is a guy that, when everything else is going wrong, is able to go out and win the game himself. And that's something that I don't think Carson Wentz is. Certainly when he was playing in 2017 in his MVP, season pre-injury, I have an Eagles friend that I would get mad at me because I told him, hey, you have the best player on the best team right now, and you better enjoy the hell out of this, because he was balling. I just think post-injury that he's not the same quarterback. And, when you look at it in the big picture, the 30,000-foot view, I don't love it because, again, I don't think he's the future franchise quarterback. I think he's a guy who's going to get you a couple extra wins this year, maybe next year. And then 2 years from now, maybe in Ron's final year, you're back in that same, quarterback abyss where you're looking at the draft. You're trying to develop someone. You're trying to, do this or that. In the short term, I think he's going to be good. I think fans are going to be excited because I think he's, the most competent quarterback that Washington's had, hopefully sustained sans injury, since Kirk Cousins left. And when I look at this team next year, you look at a team that won 7 games last year. They obviously had the COVID outbreak late in the season. Their 2 big offseason signings in Curtis Samuel and William Jackson weren't. Curtis Samuel gave you absolutely nothing. William Jackson was spotty good and got better as the season went on. And your first round draft pick did absolutely nothing either. And so if any of those things get a little bit better, if any of those things, if Curtis Samuel plays, if Jamin Davis gives you something at middle linebacker, and you're still sitting here with Taylor Heineke as your quarterback, you would think you would go from 7 to maybe 8 or 9 wins. Plus, they're not going to be playing a first place schedule. They're not going to run through the gauntlet of best quarterbacks in the NFL. That's an extra, maybe win, half win, whatever you want to call it. So had they not gone out and gotten Carson Wentz, I would have expected them to win 9 or 10 games. Now that you went out and got Carson Wentz, I think there's a little more pressure to win more than 10 games. I think this has to be an 11-win season to justify the trade. And they very well could be. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this team has the horsepower, especially in a NFC East that is, still not great, even though you can see, teams getting, the Eagles getting a little bit better. The Cowboys are kind of always the Cowboys. But big picture, you look at the NFC, there's a lot of chance to make hay, to get some wins, because basically every good player this offseason went over to the AFC. So I think that, short-term prospects, I'm excited about Carson Wentz. Big picture, I don't love the deal in terms of where it's going to put this team, in 2 years from now.
Yeah. Okay. And what are your thoughts with constant rumors and constant reporting right now around Terry McLaurin, the guy right here? What are your thoughts on the current situation between Terry and the team, with him reportedly missing the on-field portion of the offseason until he gets his new contract? And speaking of a new contract, do you believe he'll actually receive one like this guy did in, I believe, July? Yes, I believe July last year.
Yes, I do think Terry's going to get a new contract. I think that this is the wonderful world of Twitter and, instantaneous reaction. And, I think that there's not a whole lot to talk about right now for the Commanders, because you're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen in the draft and outside of what's happening away from the field, obviously, which is its own thing. So I think as far as football goes, the Terry contract's the big thing and something that the team needs to get done. I think it will. I think we're going to see it get done, early July, late July, sometime right before training camp. The fact that Terry is going to still show up to OTAs and mini camps and stuff like that, whether he practices or not, is, I think, smart on Terry's behalf, because he's not putting himself in a position to get hurt. and more so shows the kind of guy that he is. Not that there was any question that he was this team leader, but the fact that he's going to be there, he's a little gruntled. He's not disgruntled. He's a little gruntled. He just wants a new deal, and I think ultimately he's going to get it, and they're going to get it done. I've been saying from the beginning that I think it's going to be 6 years, 5 years, 125 million, with 65 guaranteed as the main bulk of it. And I was saying that kind of before Devontae Adams got his deal and before kind of this wide receiver market blew up. To me, if you're the Commanders and you're not going to pay Terry, who are you going to pay? Do what you got to do. Don't make it a discussion. Don't let there be any animosity. If you pay an extra $1 million or $2 million a year to get Terry, so be it. He's your franchise guy. He's your horse. You have locked up 2 guys behind you, Terry and John. Next big one you're gonna have to really work on is gonna be either Montez or Chase, and you can kind of decide which one of those 2 you really want to do, and you get the deals done because you pay your own guys. You got to pay the guys who are your franchise players that your fans have glommed onto and root for and have done everything right every step of the way. You pay, and so whatever the amount it is to get Terry the deal done, you get it done.
I think the lack of social media antics by Terry with, like AJ Brown removing Tennessee from his bio, and we've seen the whole Kyler Murray stuff throughout the offseason. I think that sort of supports your point that Terry, he might be a little, upset about the current situation, but I think he's definitely a team player that we need to re-sign. But
you also got to remember all these kids are your age. They're 20, they like to have fun on social. Like, good for them. Like, do I think AJ Brown's really upset and pulling Tennessee out of his bio? No, but I think he sees he sees the crazy fans who are, starting to give him hell on Twitter. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to tweak him just a little bit. I'm going to do something like that. I don't think I think it's much to do about nothing. I think these guys are just having fun and trying to do their thing.
That's fair. You hinted at this earlier, but I have to ask you about this. The off the field drama that constantly surrounds this team. The latest bit of news was the allegations of financial improprieties that have been levied against them, withholding ticket revenues from opposing teams. Is Dan Snyder finally on his way out? If not now, then potentially later in the offseason?
I don't think so. Even now, I've bumped it up to, I think, 5% that he's out as owner. I'm not saying that I don't believe the allegations of the monetary improprieties, but I think that they might be overstated potentially. I don't have any inside information in any way, shape, or form. All I've seen is what the Commanders have said and what Jason Friedman has said. I just ultimately I think it's open season on the Commanders. I think folks are taking their opportunity to take their shots and see if they can get Dan out. I don't know that this monetary situation is something that could happen, because ultimately, even if the money within the books was appropriated differently as to whether the money went to the NFL as part of the shared dollars or whether they kept it in-house, as long as the books were on the up and up with the federal government, with the IRS, they were paying taxes on the full amount of stuff. The FTC isn't going to have a whole lot of leg to stand on to go after Snyder. And if it is about $100,000 over the course of 11 seasons or whatever, is the NFL going to throw a stink over? If that was even true, and there's a big if to all of this, if that's true, if the NFL is going to throw a stink over $10,000 of shared revenue over the course of, per year for 11, 12 years, it's kind of a drop in the bucket. I don't know that. I don't think that this is the thing that's going to get him. I've been saying that, the initial, workplace environment penalty was the $10 million fine to the team. And the NFL allowed Dan Snyder to voluntarily walk away from the team. It wasn't an actual suspension. I think the end result of all of this stuff, I think the NFL is going to actually suspend him for a season or whatever the amount is, probably fine him personally not the team, fine him personally, X amount of dollars, and that's going to be the punishment from this. And folks aren't going to be happy about it, won't be happy about it, whatever it may be. But I think that, again, a lot of this bluster is off-season talk, and the fact that the oversight committee is getting involved. The oversight committee has 7 months to make good on what they're going after, and at that point there may be a new and it's crazy to me that all this is as political as it is, and that this is kind of down party lines. The Democrats are saying Dan needs to go, and the Republicans are saying this is a waste of government money. There should be right and wrong and truth and fiction, and I think that the waters are super muddied, and at the end of the day, I think he's going to continue being the owner.
And you think constituents on both sides of the aisle would be angry at Dan Snyder right now for like different issues, whether it be like the name change, whether it be the sexual harassment allegations or financial improprieties. So yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of sad that this has become sort of like a political thing, but I did want to, you sort of touched on it, but so do you think there won't be any punishment in terms of draft picks lost for us, or in terms of financial, like a cap space hit or anything like that for the team?
Certainly not a cap space hit. Could they lose a draft pick? Certainly. I couldn't speculate on how high of a draft pick it is, because I don't know if we know how improper the financial improprieties are. And you look at some of the paperwork that the Commanders released to the FTC in support of what happened with the Jason Friedman allegations, and it's pretty detailed. I mean, I'm not a CFO, I'm not a tax lawyer, I'm not a financial crimes investigator, but I mean, if we're talking about base level, Jason said that this money was reallocated to this fund, to this fund, so the NFL didn't see it. Commanders had a pretty strong paper trail. Obviously, paper trails can be created after the fact and all that jazz. So I'm not saying one way or the other what's happening, but it's hard to see a situation where Dan is out as owner right now as things stand.
Okay. Going from the least fun part of this recording to the most fun part, talking about the draft, which is about 9 days away from the time of this recording, probably going to be even sooner when this video will be uploaded on the channel. But who do you believe the Commanders will be targeting in round one? Potentially fan favorites, Kyle Hamilton, who is my personal favorite, a guy who visited the Commanders yesterday, or Derek Stingley, Jameson Williams, the Ohio State receivers, and even Drake London, who I think is visiting the Commanders today, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm on team upgrade the offense right now. You need to get more playmakers on offense. They've spent a ton of draft picks on defense. We've talked about it ad nauseum. We've seen kind of the evolution of that with, having to figure out who you want to pay between Teron Payne and John Allen and all those things. Adding more early picks on defense is just going to kind of continue to exacerbate that problem. And I know Curtis Samuel's out there running around and playing, and he's on Instagram training, and he's at the the workouts now and all that stuff. Until I see him on the field, I'm not going to believe that they're going to get anything from him until I see him take a hit and get out there and be a part of it. And honestly, even if he does play, you just need more playmakers. You need more guys who can bust long plays, and that's been one of the biggest things this offense has been missing, has been the home run play. How often do you see guys break out for 50-yard runs or 60-yard passes or whatever it may be? I mean, the kick return against the Falcons last year, there weren't a whole lot of other, big plays. And obviously DeAndre Carter is gone now. So there goes one of your guys that was a big playmaker. So for me at 11, I want to see him go wide receiver. If Garrett Wilson is still there, he's my number one guy. Drake London is my number 2 guy. I like Olave a lot. It's going to sound like a knock on Olave, but the only place that I'm taking Olave is if I'm moving back in the draft and I can get him at somewhere in the 15 to 25 range or so. to me, there are questions about Olave after the catch. He has super low yards after catch numbers and low broken tackles and all those things. And there's different ways you can look at it. You know, he's not a great contested catch maker either. And when I say not great at any of those three things, obviously elite, but as you're talking about the rest of the top end receivers, there are different ways you can look at it. To me, I look at, you know, it's easy. It's a lot easier to get open in college, especially with the offense that Ohio State played in. So the fact that he was able to make wide open catches is, you know, speaks to his route running. Certainly it speaks to his ability to win at the line of scrimmage, which is very important. But at the same time, I don't think you can expect to step in the NFL and have that kind of success. So if you're not able to break tackles, you're not making contested catches. Those are two things I think, especially early on in an NFL career, you have to be able to prove to be, or you have to be a super elite route runner. And to me, I think that's what I think Garrett Wilson separates himself in the route running and the speed and all that. And to me, Drake London is a lot better in the contested catches, big body, able to break tackles. I think Drake London is the most underrated receiver in this draft. And it's hard to say because he might go top 10, top 15, but he's a guy who won off the line of scrimmage consistently. He's a guy who got himself open and ended up having such high contested catch numbers because his quarterbacks were atrocious at getting on the ball when he was open. I like Drake London a lot. I ultimately think Garrett Wilson is gone and Drake London is going to be the pick at 11. But if they end up going defense, you know, and Derek Stingley is there. I love him. Kyle Hamilton, great. Also, you know, they did just re-sign Bobby McCain. Obviously, they have Cam Curl at safety. So bringing in a third safety, you certainly have that Landon Collins Buffalo nickel role that, you know, is now kind of open. So there's plenty of playing time for Kyle Hamilton to see. And even though they re-signed Bobby McCain, if Kyle Hamilton is a star, you just count that as cash flushed down the drain and you play the best player. But I think they're going to go receiver at 11. I got Drake London as my pick.
Interesting though. I know he sustained the torn ACL national championship game, but there have been reports that his injury timetable is only 5 to 7 months. I think there's an NFL.com article that was posted a couple of weeks ago, and you know he's even ahead of that recovery timetable. No Jameson Williams in terms of.
I love Jameson Williams. I think he was the best receiver in college football. I think there are teams that can afford to, quote unquote, take a chance on a guy like that. It's a little bit earlier in the draft than maybe, you know, they would. I don't think the Commanders are in that place right now. I think I'm not saying they need to be safe, but I think they need to make the best and safest pick that they can make who can step in and help out, because a second season if whoever they take at 11 has a similar season to what Jamin Davis did last year, there are going to be a lot of questions about that front office. And as much as Ron is the head coach, we know that he's also involved in the front office things. And there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered. If you take a Jameson Williams and for whatever reason he's unable to play this season or has a setback, obviously they just brought in a new trainer, but you know, all Commanders fans and folks across the NFL know about the Commanders, we'll call it luck when it comes to injuries and that sort of thing. I just don't think they're in a position where they can afford to take that chance. Now, if they trade back in the draft and move back down and he's there, you know, wherever they move to, I still wouldn't take him because I don't think the Commanders can do that, but it's certainly a lot more palatable if you're talking about him, you know, at 20 as opposed to 11.
Okay. And I've heard more people jump on the train recently that Washington should look into adding a running back, potentially in the second round, to our current group.
Nope.
You're Brees Hall? No. Okay.
I'm fine with adding a running back.
Okay.
You have two. I'm going to use serviceable because they're both better than serviceable. You have two good running backs. You have two usable, serviceable running backs. Again, there are teams that can start building towards what's going to happen 2-3 years from now. I think part of the Carson Wentz trade is Ron is putting pressure on himself and on the team to win now. And I don't think early in the draft you can afford to take people who might help you down the road. There's enough holes on this team that need to be filled that, you know, I take best player available most of the time, but it's maybe best player available at a position of need, which is kind of a big addition to that. But there's too many holes. There are too many places where this team needs to upgrade for them to make a luxury pick like a running back in the second round. And running backs, you can find running backs. You found Antonio Gibson in the third round. You got J.D. McKissick, basically off of waivers. There are running backs that you can find out there. How many running backs are true 3-down backs in this NFL? There aren't that many guys. And as inflated value as wide receivers have right now, running backs have that much of a deflated value because you have a good offensive line, you have a good system, and you're going to be able to find yards in the running game. You're going to be able to find holes and hit them. And Antonio Gibson has as much explosiveness as any other running back. You saw what he did in college. He had his senior season, he had 7 plays of 70 or plus yards, 70 or more yards. He has the explosion. He just hasn't been able to get out there and show it yet. And I don't know if that's going to come, but I'm not drafting a running back until day 3 at the earliest.
Okay. I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you this question last year when we had our interview. I believe actually around the same time last year, leading into 2021 NFL draft. So I wanted to ask you this question again, because obviously Chase Young, the guy that you see here
in the middle.
I got the trifecta going. Who do you believe will have more sacks this year, Chase Young or Montez Sweat?
I sure hope Chase Young. I mean, I don't know. I guess if you're gun to the head, I would say Montez Sweat right now, just because he's going to have a full off season of work and is not coming off a torn ACL. Chase Young is a superstar athlete and an incredible football player. And I hope last year was just an anomaly. I hated his pass rush approach for the most part last year. There was a lot of stutter. He's one of the most athletic, one of the strongest guys in the NFL. And he came off the line of scrimmage and did this little stutter step move before getting into his pass rush, far too often. And I don't know where he picked it up from. I don't know if that was his doing. I don't know if it was, Sam Mills, the defensive line coach, is doing. I don't know where it came from, but it needs to end up in the garbage, and it needs to not be, and we need to not see it this year. He needs to use that raw athleticism, that raw speed, and start working on secondary moves off of that. He needs to challenge tackles to move laterally while also being able to set for a guy who's coming at him full speed. And then you can start working the rips and the swims and the spins and the stutter step, whatever the hell you want off of that. But I want to see him have a better pass rush approach. And I think he can. But this is a big season all of a sudden. In his third year, he obviously had a pretty dominant rookie season. Last year was very bad. I would say it wasn't even kind of okay. His sack, he had 1.5 sacks. There was a sack in week 1 against Justin Herbert that they ended up giving to John Allen that really was Chase Young's sack. So, maybe he gets to 2.5, 3 sacks or so, but he wasn't a difference maker. And not only was he not a difference maker, at times he was a liability rushing passer. And you can't have your most talented defensive player be a liability in any way, shape, or form. That guy needs to be a beast and needs to dominate. And I expect that Chase is going to come out this year and have a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to have heard all the idiots like me sitting here saying that things were so bad last year. Yeah. And he's going to want to prove everybody wrong. So I'm excited for Chase's season. I think he's going to have a big year. It's just there's a little bit of pressure on him now all of a sudden to be that guy. Be a dude, as he would say.
Yeah. Okay. The last question that I have for you, Mitch, and again, appreciate you for being so gracious with your time today. But
of course,
how far off do you think this team is from not just making the playoffs, but potentially making a deep run, potentially vying for that S word, SB word in the near future? And if this team has another 7 or 8 win season, do you believe that Ron Rivera will officially be on the hot seat?
So I'll start with the Ron Rivera thing. I think certainly he'll be on the hot seat. I think this Carson Wentz trade has a built-in ripcord with the no guaranteed money kind of after this year. So if I honestly think a lot of it, there's a lot of nuance to it. I think that it depends on how the season goes, first off. It depends on if Ron and his staff are proven to be able to develop some of these players. Does Jamin Davis have a better season? Does De'Ami Brown have a better season? Do these rookie draft picks kind of work out? If all those things happen and the team still kind of takes a step back because Carson Wentz stinks or whatever, then you can trust Ron and Martin and Marty to draft a quarterback, and you can keep them around for years 4 and 5 and kind of see how things go. If you're left in the desert again in the draft like they were last year, and Sam Cosmi was fine. He was a solid pick, but by no means did he excel or prove that they were super smart for drafting him there. If you end up with a second season where the draft doesn't really pan out, guys aren't really developing, Carson Wentz is kind of a bust, which I think has to happen for them to only win 7 games. Can you trust Ron and company to do that? I think this Carson Wentz trade has just put a ton of pressure on them to win now and to look good. Now, you asked about the playoffs, conference championship, Super Bowl stuff. I think those are different tiers. I think this team should be a playoff team this year. I think you should see 11 wins. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. We'll see what happens come training camp, but I'm prepared to say in training camp that they should be an 11-win team. The defense shouldn't be as bad as it was last year. By all accounts, they've worked together now for another season. You have some consistency on the back end by bringing back Bobby McCain. Cam Curl has proven to be pretty much a breakout star. You hope that William Jackson is a little bit better. Benjamin St. Juste has another year under. This defense should be better. You look on the offensive side.
The schedule,
certainly
well.
the schedule, all of these things.
Yeah.
On the offensive side, Carson Wentz is a huge upgrade. Hopefully Curtis Samuel can play. Hopefully Logan Thomas is coming back. There are a lot of question marks, but I tend to look on the positive side of things, and I think most of them are going to, at least early on in the season, be in the Commanders' favor. And so I think this team should be a playoff team. The question is a playoff team good enough? Are you happy with just making the playoffs? And considering the 25-year, 3 playoff appearances in 25 years, maybe that's enough. But for me, I want to see this team start taking real steps forward and be true contenders, be a threat, be somebody that teams don't want to play. Don't just sneak your way into the playoffs, once every couple seasons and lose a playoff game, or maybe win one and then get your doors blown off, in the second one. But I guess, at some point you need baby steps, and I think making the playoffs is important. I just think that with Carson Wentz, the playoffs are your ceiling. I don't think you can make a conference championship. Certainly don't think you can make a Super Bowl with the Carson Wentz that he is today. And, if he gets to 11 wins and gets to the playoffs, fans have every right to be super excited. And I certainly hope that that's the case. I just don't think that he can lift you up to get to really meaningful playoff victories. And, and that's my issue with the trade from the jump.
Getting to the playoffs with a winning record would be a major jump too, because we haven't had that since 2016, if I'm not mistaken.
2016,
yeah. But yeah, Mitch, thank you so much for joining me on this on the channel. And is there anything you want to plug before we sign off officially?
No, just follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Mitch_Tischler, and check out the Washington Football Talk podcast. And hopefully by the time this thing airs, there's a new name to it, and if not then, at some point soon, and we'll see how it goes. But love the show, love the channel. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. And for those of you out there, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the DMVSportsZone channel, where we like to post fire content like this as much as possible. Also, go follow our Instagram page, all lowercase DMVSportsZone, our Twitter page at DMVSportsZone, and our TikTok at DMVSportsZone as well.
Oh,
yeah.
We're rocking TikTok now. That's a new one.
We're rocking TikTok. I know. It is a new one. It's run by a couple of the hosts on the channel. I don't really have TikTok, but I leave the duties. I leave that for the other hosts on this channel.
You guys aren't just like rocking TikTok dances in the middle of your episodes?
No, we might soon. We'll see, but no, not right now. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Mitch, have a great rest of your day as well, and see you guys on the next one. Peace.